Hi friends, welcome to the 1840 podcast, where each month we explore a different topic balancing modern sensibilities with traditional sensitivities to give you new approaches to timeless Jewish ideas. I'm your host, David Beshefkin, and this month we're continuing our exploration of the war in Israel. This podcast is part of a larger exploration of those big, juicy Jewish ideas, so be sure to check out 1840.org, that's 18forty.org, where you can also find videos, articles, recommended readings, and weekly emails. I remember in that first episode that we released once the war broke out, there was a real sense of being completely upside down, of being turned over, of not knowing top from bottom, right from left. It was almost a disorientation. And it's not because I am particularly righteous. I think this podcast has featured more often than not my struggles, my difficulties, my bad decision making, etc., etc. But one of the intuitions that I am very grateful to have and to cultivate is the sense that during times of difficulty, when things are upside down, I really look to halacha, I really look to Torah guidance to find some stability in my own life. I don't know that I embody it. I don't know that I follow it to every dot and I, but I know that it brings me a great sense on a very personal level, comfort to know that there is guidance, there is a path forward, no matter how difficult and dark things seem, there is a path forward. I remember, and I've written about it, how when the coronavirus broke out, one of the things that brought me comfort in those very early, heavy days in March was when Rav Hershel Schachter, the Rosh Yeshiva in Yeshiva University, started sharing responsa specifically in his own, classical font. He always writes in this Rashi script. The first time I got one of his responsa, I'm like, there's a path forward. There's going to be a way out of this. And in a similar sense, when this war broke out and felt just so unstable and so broken, I found at least a great sense of stability, a great sense of comfort in knowing that we have Torah guidance, we have a path forward. It's one of the ironies of halacha that one of the areas that I think give people the most stability are the laws of mourning. That specifically when things are most upside down, when things are most painful, when we are in the shadow of suffering, we have a halacha, we have a system, we have a language that allows us to restore and see a path forward, specifically in our darkest hours. And because the tragedy and the terrorist attacks unfolded in Israel, I really knew that there was one person whose voice I wanted to hear, I wanted to listen to specifically in this moment when it seems so bleak and so dark, and that is our incredibly esteemed guest today, Rabbi Yosef Zvi Rimon. Rabbi Rimon, who many of our listeners may know from his works or from his leadership in Israel, he is somebody who is literally given his entire life not just to clarifying in an incredibly accessible ways the details of halacha, but really uplifting the Jewish people and particularly spending a great deal of time at the very front lines, encouraging and inspiring Israeli soldiers, Achenu B'nai Yisrael, our brothers and sisters who have dedicated their lives to protecting the Jewish people in the land of Israel. The difficulty, of course, with Rabbi Rimon in those moments, in those days and weeks immediately after the terrorist attacks of October 7th was the fact that he was so incredibly busy. And obviously, the people that he needed to prioritize were the people who needed his guidance most, those serving and protecting the Jewish people at the front lines of the Israeli army. But I knew it was the voice of Rabbi Rimon that I wanted to introduce to our listeners who had not yet heard him, or at the very least bring forward to many of our listeners who already have. There is something truly incredible and unique about the Torah and halachic guidance of Rabbi Rimon. There was a fabulous interview that I went back to reread. It came out 5 years ago. And I remember when it did come out, it was when his name was first bubbling up on the national scene. It's an interview in Hebrew in Makor Rishon, where he was asked by the interviewer, Elyashav Reichner, about his work that he was publishing on Hilchos Shabbos. And one of the things that the interviewer asked him, and I think it's so central to why his voice is so important, not just to soldiers in Israel, but I think to worldwide Jewry, specifically in this moment. The interviewer asked him kind of a side question, asking him about what are the topics that he is drawn to. He writes on Shabbos, he writes on Yontif, he's written a beautiful work on the laws of Shemitah, but he stays away from certain more divisive topics, which while he gives classes in them, he doesn't really publish on them. I don't know if that's changed in the last 5 years. I don't think it has, but there are certain topics that he doesn't want to publish on. And he asked him, why don't you publish on kind of the juicier, controversial topics? And his response I found incredibly moving, and it's why he was a voice, I think, of this moment that we need right now. This is Rav Rimon's response. He says, Rashis, first and foremost, ki hamatara shali, hi lidog lahavi halacha amuka ve'ahuva la'am Yisrael. First and foremost, my goal, my worry, my efforts is to bring the depth and substance of halacha and the lovingness of halacha itself to the Jewish people. Kol echad tzarech livchor. Everyone needs to choose mahu rotze b'chayav v'zeha inyan shali. People want to choose how to live their lives. I'm not telling them how to live their lives, but I am giving them a way to access halacha, where halacha is given with a voice of love itself. And he says the second thing, davar sheni, the second thing, ani modeh, I'm going to admit, she'ani boreach mimachlokos umekita pulmotit kemo me'esh. I run away from machlokes, I run away from political polemics like fire. Zelo matim l'neshama shali, it's not good for my own soul. V'lo l'nefesh shali, v'ani lo rotze et zeh. I don't want to get involved in controversial politics and back and forth. I want to give over halacha through a lens of love. That is my goal. And this is baked into his very personality. His grandfather and namesake, Rabbi Yosef Zvi Rimon, was actually a poet, a beautiful poet. He was born in 1889, he died in 1958, and he was in the inner circle of Rav Kook, and his poetry was actually popular in Israel across all circles. The secular public, the religious public, embraced his beautiful poems. And at the heart of the poetry of his grandfather was the centrality of love itself. This is one of his grandfathers, his very namesake, Rav Yosef Zvi Rimon. This is one of his poems. Elokim Elokai, God, my God. Agma nafshi la'avasecha, my soul yearns for your love. Avi ha'elokim, Father and God. Le'esh avasecha echsof, for the fire of your love I yearn. Shakai, Shakai, Almighty, Almighty. Himtir alai eish shamayich, let the rain of your heaven fall upon me. Tain chezyoncha Elokai, grant me your vision, my God. His poems are screaming out, Le'esh ahavasecha echsof, for the fire of your love I desire, I yearn. This is his namesake, and I believe in many ways he has taken the poetry of his grandfather and integrated it into the way that he develops and transmits halachic guidance to everyone serving on the front lines, and in many ways to all of the Jewish people. His works on Shabbos and on Yontif and on Shemitah, if you don't already have them on your shelves, nearly all of them have been translated into English, and you see the vision and beauty and the love of halacha, taking the vision of his grandfather's poetry and almost integrating it into the way halacha is transmitted to the Jewish people. And when the war first broke out, I reached out to Rabbi Rimon and asked him if he would come on. It was too busy at the time. He didn't have the time, not to say that he is not still and remains incredibly busy, but he was able to share a brief voice note about some of the halachic issues that he was dealing with. And I want to share with you, he shared it in English. He normally, his native language, as you can hear, is in Hebrew. And throughout the episode, we did our best. He knows he's speaking to an English-speaking audience. But I want to begin in those early days, that first voice note that he sent, before we actually get to the actual conversation. Here is what Rev Rimon sent.
Shalom uvracha. I was asked to share questions that I received from the battlefield. I'm all the time with the soldiers, with the families, and I share a few quick questions. Two questions that were similar from soldiers that wanted to donate a kidney. But if they donate a kidney, they wouldn't be able to serve in combat units anymore. And now it's a wartime. So I'll just say briefly, we have a rule called posek mitzvah, patur min mitzvah. If you are now dealing with one mitzvah, you don't need to do another one. You are dealing with this one because of this, when it's a wartime. And someone, the first one that asked me, he wanted to donate a kidney, but he didn't have someone specific to give to him. I told him, look, now it's a mitzvah of a war, be here. After the war finishes, then can think on the right time to donate a kidney. The other one was someone that they found already someone that matched exactly to his kidney. And the operation was planned to this week on Tuesday. And this one I said, look, because already after all the process, and already we have a time for the operation on Tuesday, so you will donate a kidney, although you won't be able to serve in combat in the army, at least in the next few years. So this is an example for one question. Another question from lots of people that they have a wedding set up and they don't know to marry, to delay it. Is it the right thing to marry someone now when in the middle of a war people are killed? And I told them, look, if there is a problem that you say we cannot get married now, we are in tension, we are, in this case, you don't need to get married. But if, okay, it's good for you to get married, but you don't know if it's the right thing, so it seems that following halacha, it's better not to delay weddings. And if our enemy tries to destroy our life, we won't let him. We'll get married, we'll continue to build our families, and we won't stop our building in our life, also if the enemy tries to do it. And Baruch Hashem, I'm already went and was invited for a few weddings. So this was also a popular question. This question is also sometimes more sensitive. There's one family that one child is wounded, but he is okay, he wants to get married. The other one, we don't know where he is. Maybe he's alive, maybe he's not alive. To make a wedding, to delay. And can we tell the army not to tell them what happened till after the wedding? So it's complicated. I won't say all the answers now. In the bottom line, I'll say that I recommended them to get married and they did it. Another question from a child, 10 years old, that asks me, Rebbe, what's going on? How can it be that we are in such a low position and Hashem loves us? God is with us? And I told her, look, Jewish people were killed for thousands of years. It's not the first time, but we have to remember. Thousands of years, we didn't have the ability to protect ourselves. Now we have a state, we have the IDF. Baruch Hashem, we are strong, please God. And Hashem gave us the ability to protect ourselves. And today, Baruch Hashem, we have the ability to protect ourselves. We have the state of Israel. We have a strong army. And never in history, a nation was chucked out of the country. And after thousands of years came back. Everything is written in the Bible, in the Torah, in the Nevi'im. To see Am Yisrael comes back and have a state and have an army. We know that Hashem loves us. It's not easy. It's not simple. But Baruch Hashem, the ability to protect ourselves, to have a country, a state, an army, this is something that we know that it's a part of our redemption. And Be'ezrat Hashem, this will lead us also to win this war and all the evil that tries to attack and to kill and to destroy. Be'ezrat Hashem will succeed to win and to bring Am Yisrael to be in peace, in love, unity, and simcha, Be'ezrat Hashem.
The magnitude of the questions that he was dealing with and the urgency at the time, I obviously understood why he wouldn't have the time for an actual interview, but I knew that I wanted to bring his voice onto 1840, and I didn't give up, and I wouldn't give up. I have a dear friend who many of our listeners may know. His name is Rabbi Shmuel Ismach. He is a rabbi in Great Neck and has been a long-time sounding board and friend to everything 1840. He is somebody who has given me guidance when I needed it, who's given me feedback when I needed it, and somebody who I really speak out so many of the issues that I'm privileged to have with our 1840 community. I visited his community in Great Neck. He has an incredible shul, the Young Israel of Great Neck. Rimon, and just an incredible person. We have this kind of like affinity. We're both non-YU products. Neither of us went to YU for undergrad. I did smicha in YU and I did my master's in YU, but I didn't learn in yeshiva. I learned in Baltimore, and we're kind of both non-YU products in some ways. He didn't do smicha in YU either, who both teach in Yeshiva University, and we have similar outlooks and we get into similar conversations. And he went on an incredible trip that we're going to hear directly from Rabbi Ismach again, and he almost reignited my original idea of we need to get Rev Rimon to speak to the 1840 community. And I reached out to Rav Ismach, and he was kind enough to have a conversation with me about this trip and explaining why he had this urgency. We're going to make this happen. Here is my brief conversation with Rav Shmuel Ismach. The reason why I wanted specifically to talk to Rav Rimon is really from the encouragement of Rav Ismach. I heard from Rav Ismach, he made a trip to Israel and he came back. And if you know Rabbi Ismach, he's not the most effusive person necessarily. He's not Mr. running around in the middle of the circle. He's certain circumspect. He is a trained Litvak in many ways and has a certain composure to himself. But he came back and I heard him speak in ways that I've never really heard from him before, which is why this interview, even with Rev Rimon, is done alongside Rav Shmuel Ismach. And I wanted to talk a little bit with Rav Ismach to hear firsthand what his experience was and why he was so urgent that we need to have this conversation for our audience. It is our privilege and pleasure to introduce our friend, Rav Shmuel Ismach.
Thank you, David. One of my life streams is to be called a dear friend of yours. And I will share, I did want you to put Rav Rimon on because my experience was so overwhelming when I went and spent about 24 hours with him that I thought it would be beneficial for everybody to hear just from somebody who's doing the work that we wish we could all be doing effectively. Essentially, I went before it was, a lot of rabbis have gone since and spent time with Rav Rimon as well. And some were critical of, what are you going for? And I can't disagree more. I am not a soldier. It's true. I'm not that well coordinated. But at the same time, just to be able to visit a nation where people are using the word escape to be able to get out, to just talk to the cabbies and to the falafel guys, and to share the message that, we're coming here and we just want to be with you, to give the hug, as Rav Rimon would constantly refer to, give that hug, was a very powerful thing. Forgetting about supporting industry and supporting the economy, that's all great as well. But just to be there, and for selfish reasons entirely, because the things that I saw and the people who I met and the sensation, the feeling that I had while I was there was so powerful. As I repeated to my shul, like I've been to the state of Israel dozens of times, but never did I really, truly, deeply meet the nation of Israel, Am Yisrael, until this trip. And I can't wait, and I'm trying to figure out a way to get back. So for those who know Rav Rimon, you know how seriously really he takes his job as a leader. When he came to my community, he was taking selfies with the kids who would come to his shiurim. Do you want a picture? Because he realized that this would be a moment for them, and he took it very seriously. He's a mechanech. He's involved in trying to do all sorts of chesed.
Mechanech means an educator.
An educator, yes. He's even beyond an educator, honestly.
Yes.
Me and you, we're just mechanech.
We're educators, yeah.
He's much more serious. But the truth is, his activities on the ground, I just called him up, like I think anybody would, and said, can I come along? And from the barbecues that we were able to sponsor, I had a friend of mine from Great Neck, Bernie Mermelstein, who was there with me, who was sponsoring these barbecues. The Chayalim were so incredibly excited to see him. And he would ask after he was finished, and I'm sure we'll hear from him exactly what he did when he was there. But when he was done, he would ask, he said, anybody want a hug or a bracha? Not everybody wants a bracha, not everybody wants a hug, but everybody wants one of those two things. And he would give out these skin dog tags, which had Shema Yisrael on them. And of course, everybody would grab one. They would put it on their dog tags. It was like this meaningful moment. Of course, one guy would ask, can I take this into the bathroom? Because he's the quintessential posek while he's the person who's giving that unbelievably powerful hug as well. My experience was really overwhelming. And I think everybody, if they can go, whether you're going to bases or whatever it is that you're doing, it is impactful. I had the opportunity to spend some time with Rabbi Hauer, who was there for the OU as well.
Rabbi Hauer is the executive vice president of the Orthodox Union.
Yes, and he was generous to have me tag along, and we went to Sderot, we went to Kiryat Arba to meet with the Liebman family, and these are very powerful experiences. The people you bump into in the street, Doron Peretz from World Mizrahi, you've probably heard his story and what he's dealing with.
Sure.
One of his children has been kidnapped. He made a wedding with a son who was actually shot on October 7th. I mean, the people who are living there are beyond compare. It's very difficult to not just speak to people who are there, who are managing everything that's happening. And they themselves are a chizuk machine. They're a strengthening machine. And just for selfish reasons, to go and to come back with those messages to share with the community, that's completely why I went, and I know what I drew from it.
I want to just ask one question. I know it's something that Rimon discusses in the interview, but he didn't even spend enough time on it, and I found it so moving. I just want you to share, because it's what initially grabbed me. How did Rabbi Rimon open up every meeting with the Chayalim when he would visit a base? What was his opening?
So what he did was he would set them all in a circle, and there were some bases that like almost everybody would show up, just only the religious kids would show up. Sometimes you would have the Chayalim with the tattoos and the tzitzit on top, these brand new tzitzit that all the seminary girls put together. I mean, it was remarkable to see who was in these respective circles. But the first thing he would ask was, what are you feeling? What are you feeling? What's on your mind?
What are you feeling?
And some of the guys would say things like, we're impatient, we're restless. This was, of course, before they had entered Gaza. We're restless. We want to do something. We have incredible faith, they would say, in the army. The government, not so much. I mean, some of them would kvetch and complain, and some of them were fearful. They would share their concerns about their families in some of the edge and border towns in the north near Gaza. What's going to be? Will anybody want to live there anymore? I mean, they were very raw, very raw. And Rabbi Rimon did not have all the answers, right? That wasn't really what he was there for, but to validate the questions and to, in that circle, be hearing from everyone and having everybody be able to open their mouth and to share their voice was a very powerful thing to observe.
To open up that way, what are you feeling, is a powerful image to hear that question. And the opening question of Rabbi Rimon, who has so much Torah, so many ideas to share, but he begins a meeting to provide encouragement and inspiration with the question of what are you feeling? What is moving you right now is something that I've been thinking about ever since. And I just want to say, before we jump into the interview, how grateful I am to you for really making this conversation happen. And I would be remiss if I did not also say how grateful I am. And I know you're the type to hate this, but I'm going to do it anyways, for such an incredible friendship that you've been to me, a supporter, a guide, somebody who gives me chizuk at all the right times. And really, it is not something that is lost on me, and wishing you just really continued strength in your leadership, in your shuls, communities, and uplifting Amcha Yisrael and Klal Yisrael throughout the world. I am so grateful to you, Rabbi Ismach, for really, you are the one who made this conversation happen, and I am so, so deeply appreciative.
Thank you, David, and I hope that part gets deleted, but in any event, what you're doing is great, and keep up the wonderful work.
And it's really because of Rav Ismach, like, coming back, calling me back after this trip, and reigniting. I had the voice note, and I was thinking I could get somebody else on, we could find somebody else. He's the one who said, no, your first intuitions were correct. Let's get Rev Rimon to talk a little bit to the 1840 community. Some of you may have never heard him speak before. Again, I want to emphasize he is a native Hebrew speaker. His English sometimes can sound a little bit, but he speaks a beautiful English. I don't mean to knock it, but for some of our listeners who are used to me translating or used to me, speaking a little bit more clearly, I think for this moment, in this hour, open up your ears a little bit. And even if you don't understand every single word, I think it's fully understandable. And he did a wonderful job. But open up your ears, open up your heart. Rav Ismach really is the one who deserves all of the credit. And that's why I insisted. I said, look, you made this happen. I want you on this. I want you to draw out what you saw. You witnessed this yourself. So here is our conversation, myself, Rav Shmuel Ismach, together with Rav Yosef Zvi Rimon.
Rav Rimon, I know you are the Rav in Gush Etzion, specifically Alon Shvut. And so going back to the day of October 7th, that morning, Shmini Atzeret, how did you find out? And at what point did you realize that there was something very serious going on?
So in the middle of davening, I can say after an hour, something like this, I knew that something happened. I understood that there is attack, and later on, I understood that it's a real war. And it was very complicated because you have a community, thousands of people around, hundreds of children, and what exactly do you do? And I decided, on one hand, to make the akafot and the things a little shorter, but on the other hand, to continue. And in my head, I had the words of my father, Alav Shalom, that served in the Haganah. And he writes then that the situation is very bad. Then, Kimtei De'aga Charushim al Yishuv. The Yishuv is very worried and they don't know what to do. And then he says, but we have to continue and to live the simcha and happiness. We cannot stop everything. Now, maybe if I would know how terrible it is, I wouldn't be able to do anything, but I didn't imagine that it was so terrible. So we continued, but we did it shorter. We said Tehillim, we davened for the soldiers, for the citizens, and every few minutes, a soldier comes to me and says, Arav, can I have bracha? I'm going to the battlefield. Arav, can I have bracha? Another bracha, and another bracha, and another one. 400 soldiers went on this Simchat Torah, left Alon Shvut and went on the border. And for me, it was, wow, another one, and another one, and another one. I give bracha, but my heart is all the time so worried. This was Simchat Torah.
Were there any she'elot that came to the Rav? I know the Rav has many different chats with many rabbanim. I'm in one with, I think, 800 different rabbis and with soldiers and with doctors. Were there any she'elot on that day that the Rav was addressing?
On the war, I got lots of she'elot, and I'm ready to share some of them. And that day, I had she'elot, because there are she'elot, first of all, people don't know what happens. So, okay, to turn on my cell phone to see if they're calling me. He doesn't know. And what happens if they didn't call me to go? To go, just to go, because I know that something started, or to wait. And if I'm going, can I take my tefillin with me? Can I take other things? I don't know. Maybe it's going now for a few weeks, maybe more. It goes in a war. So lots of questions like this. I got also other questions. I'm sharing questions and not the answers now. Later on, I'm ready to share some of the answers, but sometimes there are very challenging questions. Someone that says, I'm going now, my wife is crying all the time, she's so worried, but now she's nida. She didn't go to the mikveh yet. Can I give her just a short hug before I'm going to the war? So it was a very tough day.
Wow. So I guess my question when it comes to these she'elot is, that's a very reactive, in the moment. What siman in Shulchan Aruch, what chapter in Shulchan Aruch is the Rav using to prepare to be able to answer these questions? Where does this come up? Is this a matter of experience? Is it a matter of studying some Rishon that I've never seen? How do you answer the questions? How do you even come to it?
It's very interesting because I shared just few questions, but there are a lot of questions that are really war questions. Harav Kook has a tshuva in Mishpat Kohen, Siman Kuf Mem Gimel. And in this tshuva, he says that he's sure that that there are halachos that were like a special Shulchan Aruch in the time of the Maccabim, the Hashmonaim. They had a Shulchan Aruch for the army, and we haven't got it. And for thousands of years, it didn't bother Am Yisrael at all. And it's complicated. So Chafetz Chaim started and wrote Sefer Vachanei Israel for Jewish soldiers in the Russian army. And then Rav Goren followed, and then others, and also I wrote 2 books for the army soldiers. But those are things that you have all the time to understand what's going around in the army, to understand things in halacha. And sometimes when someone doesn't understand the army good enough, his psakim will be sometimes or to maken or to machmir. You have to understand when you have to be maken and when you must be naked, and it's complicated. And of course, when you have questions like this, you need to use tools that maybe normally you would never use. You need to think not just on the Psak Halacha and Shulchan Aruch. You have to remember those Rishonim and those Rishonim, and maybe you can bring those together and Shat Adchak, and so there are lots of things that now it's a time to think, okay, think on everything and try to see what is the right answer to this situation.
Rabbi Rimon, allow me to ask, you had an experience where you served in the army. I'm curious how your own personal experiences in the army and the advice that you sought and who you sought advice from are informing your experience and the way that you're relating and guiding the soldiers now.
So I served in the army in Tanks Unit 188. It's a very famous unit. As a soldier, so first of all, I had lots of questions. And although I spoke lots of times in my life with Rav Goren, because he was in Tel Aviv, I was in Tel Aviv, he knew my family, but when I was in the soldiers, he wasn't already in the army or giving questions on answering. So I had other rabbis. I asked then Mori Rabbi Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. I asked Rav Amital, Mori Rabbi Zecher Tzadik Livracha. And all the time, when I saw things, I had to check to see what to do here, to do there. I learned. in my serving in the army. And from then, I had thousands of students that served in the army. So all the time, also after I finished serving, I got more questions, but I had people that are really know what's going on here and there. And when I wrote more and more, so I got more and more questions, but everyone gave me more understanding what's going on. And also I served in reserve for 20 years. And I think that this gave me lots of experience in lots of areas in the army.
Was there a specific interaction that you had with Rabbi Lichtenstein or a message that he gave you that still stays with you today?
He gave me lots. I'm thinking now just on things that connected to the army. But with Rabbi Lichtenstein, I spoke in the last 30 years of his life every day. So I have lots what to say. But regards the army, there were things that usually he would be machmir. Example, when I asked him if I can go to eat somewhere where there is no Eruv and I have to take the gun with me. And Rav Goren thought that carrying a gun, maybe it's like tachshit. Maybe it's something like jewelry, something that it's okay. And Rav Lichtenstein didn't believe in it, in this psak. But he understood that for a soldier to go around and to eat normally, it's also important. And because of this, to take the weapon through Mekom Tor. Doesn't matter now what is exactly Mekom Tor, but those two things together, he said, okay, this is okay. And also lots of other things. We came from the army, and Rav Lichtenstein said, on one hand, I don't believe in the way of a Platon that said that chinuch tzva'i u chinuch echrechi, that education of the army is something that everyone must have. But he said, there are lots of things in the army that someone that serves in the army can understand. For example, how important is every minute. 30 seconds. If you are late in 1 second, you are going to run. You are going, and lots of things that you have to learn in the army that will give you tools for all your life.
You were in my shul in Great Neck, and you had a story that you told about the interface and the interaction of halacha and tefillah before going out to war. If the Rav could share.
So this story happened in my unit in the army. I came later, but I saw it written in a letter of the officer that is not observant and not religious, and he writes that they were in Lebanon, and suddenly a soldier goes on the walkie-talkie and says, Commander, I want to say tefillah before we go in battle. I want to daven. And the commander says, no, there's no time now. We are a few minutes in attack. If you want, daven privately. And this soldier says, Commander, it's very important to daven before you go in battle. And then the commander thinks and says, okay, you can daven here, you can say the prayer, but quickly. And this soldier says that tefillah that we say before we go in battle, short tefillah, אתם יוצאים היום למלחמה או לאויביכם, אל יערך לבבכם, don't be afraid, אנא השם הושיע נא, אנא השם הצליח נא, אנא השם אהיה עם חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל, שלוחי עמך השם, be with the soldiers, the shlichim, the messengers, חזקנו ואמצנו, ריב ריבנו, לחם את מלחמתנו, fight for us. Finishes this short prayer, and then they hear, kan kod is commander, amen. And then he says, everyone should confirm. And then everyone says, kan echad, amen. kan echad aleph, amen. kan echad bet, amen. kan shtayim, amen. kan shtayim aleph, amen. kan shalosh, amen. Everyone confirms and says, amen. And the commander says, I'm not from. But this tefillah, this prayer, kept me and gave me koach, gave me strength for all the war.
We've been seeing some of these tefillot that have been recorded and have gone out, and a lot of what the Rav was doing is reactive she'elot, answering questions. But I want to talk about some of the proactive things that you've been doing. I had the opportunity to be with you just for 24 hours. We went to many, many bases, and I noticed a certain sequence of how you would go about dealing with the chayalim. And I really want to drill in to what you thought were the goals in sitting with them. First, if I remember, we would sit and you would ask them, is it tchushot? What's on your mind? I found that very valuable. I'm curious to hear about that, but let me just go review, because I want to make sure everybody knows what it was that happened at all of these bases with the Rav. I'm sure you're doing this already at thousands and thousands of chayalim that you've seen. I was with you just for a little bit, and it was hundreds and hundreds. And so there was the tchushot. talking about what it was that was on their minds. And then there was the message of chizuk, which I also want to ask, what's the message of chizuk that the Rav would share? There was the video of chizuk that you would take for the families who they had left behind, for the wives, for the parents, for the children. Could the Rav speak a little bit about how you see your purpose in going to visit these bases, and what exactly was it that you were doing with all of those steps?
So it's interesting because the first thing I did, straight after Simchat Torah, I took my team in Sulamot. I told them we have to see all the needs of the soldiers. And we bought equipment, ceramic vests, and other equipment. Ceramic vests, the things that I wanted to do in a way that the army would accept them. And because of it, I made it through the army, and the army also told me to give it. So everything I gave through the rules of the army. I have 3 son-in-laws in the army. They didn't get anyone because I followed the instructions of the army to be professional. So we bought 6 of ceramic vests and a few $1 million and other equipment. And when I went to the soldiers, so I sent people, and also I went to give equipment. And the soldiers were very happy. But the most important was, as the Rav said before, the chizuk. To give them, to inspire them, to give them power and koach. So, on one hand, Baruch Hashem, the soldiers are motivated. They understand that those terrible, evil terrorists, that they killed so many Jewish people and children and babies and women, that we are going to come in and to do everything to destroy them. But on the other hand, they need chizuk. And there are lots of questions that they ask. And yesterday I went to the south, day before to the north again. And also I asked soldiers, they have questions, what do you feel? One of the soldiers said, I have to say, I'm going everywhere. Someone asked me, you're going to visit Talmidim, students from the Gush, from Har Etzion? I said, no. He said, oh, I forgot, I'm sorry, that you are the Rosh Yeshiva now on Machon Lev. You're going to meet students from Machon Lev? I said, no. He said, oh, I'm sorry, I know you are the Rebbe of Gush Etzion. You're going to meet soldiers from Gush Etzion? I said, no. I said, so where are you going? I'm going to Am Yisrael. Religious, non-religious. I meet, of course, Machon Lev and Har Etzion and Gush, but not for this I'm going. I'm going to be with Am Yisrael and the soldiers, religious, non-religious. And it's very exciting because you see all of them together. And as the Rav saw, everyone comes to get a hug. Religious, non-religious, to get bracha, to get hug. And sometimes you see questions that this is from a religious soldier. He says, Rambam says that when you're going in a war, don't think on your wife, don't think on your children. תדע שמלחמת השם אתה עושה. You're doing מלחמה, a war of Hashem, God. Don't think on anything else. And he told me, what do you mean? All the time I'm thinking of them. This is what bothers me all the time. My wife, my children, so it's not okay? And I told him that I think that the Rambam didn't speak on the time that they sit now on the border. When they sit on the border and they say, send WhatsApp to their wife, to the children, it's okay. Now, knowing the Rambam, it says not to send WhatsApp to your children in wartime. I don't think it's a problem. I think Rambam spoke when you are in battle. Then don't think on anyone. And I have to tell you, Chayalei Tzva Hagana Yisrael, our soldiers, are so motivated. They understand that they are protecting Am Yisrael, that when they are in battle, they don't need Rambam to tell them. They won't think not on the wife, not on the children. They fight. Now, before battle, think on everyone, send them, it's okay, no problem. In battle, any case, you do what Rambam told you to do. So this is just an example, but lots of questions that are like this and feelings like this, and to give them chizuk for our soldiers, first of all, to remind them that we are not weak. Some of them I told that my grandfather, that I named on him, the poet, Rabbi Yosef Zvi Rimon, he was very famous. Rav Kook said that he's the greatest poet in the last few hundred years, and it is street on his name in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, Bnei Brak, and he was in Meorot Tarpat. Meorot Tarpat in Israel, terrible time that was 100 years ago.
That's the 1929 Hebron massacre.
Exactly. The Arabs killed in Hebron, in Jerusalem, in Tzfat, in Moza. You know, everyone knows it, and it's wow. This is something that so we feel it so hard. All Meorot Tarpat together, there were killed 133 Jewish people. It's less than 10% of what was in this war. And when you look at it, you say, oy vey, what's going on? So on one hand, we are crying, we are sad for the people that were killed, wounded, captured, but we have to remember all the time, in all our history, the non-Jewish, they try to kill us. Not all of them, yes? But in Holocaust, Maseh Atzlav, Gerus Sfarad, all the history. But never from the destruction, from the Churban, never we had the ability to protect ourselves. We have today a strong state, a strong army. This is a part of our redemption. We are in redemption time. We saw things that our parents for thousands of years just dream of them. We saw how the promises of the Torah, of the Nevi'im, became real. We came back to Israel. We have a state, a very successful state and a very successful army. Of course, we are sad and we are crying on all what happened. But we are not coming like someone miskin, like someone weak. We are strong. We are coming when we understand we have the energy of Hashem. We understand that Hashem is with us in wartime. The Torah promised us. Hashem Elokecha mithalech bekerev machanecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us. And we know that we are going to win. We know that Hashem is with us. We know that we have the power that Hashem promised us, and we have it in our generation. And another thing that we know, everywhere I go, I see all the soldiers, religious, not religious, left, right, all of them together. All of them, one family, and everyone is ready to fight and to rescue his life, to save his friend. When Am Yisrael is together, when Am Yisrael is united in unity, in Achdus, and when Am Yisrael believe in Hashem, we are going to win. And this is one of the messages that I give the soldiers, and I see that it gives them a huge chizuk.
It was amazing to see, and it was amazing to see the energy with the soldiers. When I was there, somebody else who I met told me that the war should have been called, because it began on Shmini Atzeret, on the day of Tfilat Geshem, it should have been called Milchemet Mashiv Haruach, because it was really put together, restored the spirit of the Jewish people. So that's the Chayalim. And one of the things you sensitized me to when I was there, and I want you to speak to this, what about the families left at home? Right? The wives and the children, the mothers and the fathers. I saw in every spot you would customize a video to those people who are back at home with the Chayalim in front of you. How's the spirit there, and how can we help?
So it's true that we have the soldiers to be worried, but the families that are alone, and to understand, one of the projects that I did now was 433,000 Mishnayos. I'm teaching Mishnayos in a special system with movies for children. There are around 433,000 soldiers in the army now. And I wanted that families will learn Mishnayos for each Chayal. But you understand that there are 433,000 families that are worrying, that maybe the wife is alone now, children, the parents. And I know from the soldiers, and also when I was a soldier, that the soldiers are not worried on themselves. They are worried on the families. And when the families are stronger, our soldiers are stronger. And because of this, everywhere I go, in the end, before I leave the Chayalim, I tell them now, we are going to video a short bracha for your wives, for the children, for the parents. Yesterday, I did it again in the south. And when I said it, people took out the cameras. I made yesterday night with rabbis of RCA. There were the hundreds of Chayalim. And they came to me afterwards and said it was so important. I blessed the wives, the children, the parents. I told them Todah, thanked them for giving them the Chayal to protect Am Yisrael. I told them that although it's complicated for thousands of years, that we didn't have the zchut, the privilege to wear a uniform of an army soldier. And I saw that this chizuk, this bracha, is so important. I got so many messages from families that they said, wow, we got the chizuk, gave us koach. So we need to think on the soldiers, on the families, and of course on the families that they had to leave their houses and to go out to be in Jerusalem, Yam HaMelech, or other places, and we're trying to think on all of them.
There was one she'ela that I remember that I've been moved by ever since. I shared it with my shul, and I don't think I could repeat it as well as the Rav said it. There were some young men, Chayalim, who came. We were in a big plane. There were two, mobile artillery on two different sides, and they had a she'ela about moving a Sefer Torah. Does the Rav remember the she'ela?
Yes. They have Sefer Torah in a tent, and they have around in the minyan, when they daven, they can collect around 15, 20 Chayalim together. But there are 4 soldiers, 4 Chayalim, that they cannot come to this tent, to this shul, synagogue, because they have to stay in a few hundred meters from the place that they have to stay there to be in charge there. And they asked me, can they bring the Sefer Torah from the tent to those 4 soldiers and to daven there with them? And like this, they won't miss the laning of the Torah. Usually, we don't transfer Sefer Torah for someone. So it's a problem. And Yerushalmi says, you mustn't. You need that האדם יבוא לתורה, ולא התורה תבוא לאדם. The human being should go to the Torah, not the Torah should come to him. And they asked me what to do. So I told them, first of all, there is a machloket, there is a disagreement. What happens if you don't go to the Sefer Torah, not because you don't want to go, because you haven't got the ability to go. Let's say you are in jail. May you bring a Sefer Torah to jail. And there is machloket. There are Rishonim that said it's okay because you cannot go. There are other Rishonim that said it's not okay. Shulchan Aruch says it's not okay. I told them also that maybe the Sefer Torah hasn't got an exact place. It's not really sure. It's that tent. And okay, it's not a place, not here, not there. Maybe it's okay. But then I told them that I have a third reason to say it's okay. The Yerushalmi says that there is an exception, that you may take Sefer Torah to Adam Chashuv, someone that is important. Adam Chashuv. What is Adam Chashuv? Usually we say Tamid Chacham, a rabbi, and also Reish Galuta, someone that is like the president or something like this. But I told them, I believe that Chayal Tzal, that a soldier that sacrificed his life to protect Am Yisrael, אין לך אדם חשוב מזה. This is the most Adam Chashuv. This is the most important man. And I believe that if the Yerushalmi says that if Adam Chashuv, something important, התורה מתגדלת על ידו, the Torah gets greatest when she comes to him, I think that the Yerushalmi, if they could give an example of Chayal Tzal in the war, they would say this is the example. התורה מתגדלת על ידו. When the Torah comes to the Chayal, I think the Torah is excited. And because of this, I think it's okay.
That is incredibly moving. And I'm curious, just to shift, you have a WhatsApp that deals with halacha questions that you get from throughout the world. And I'm curious in this moment, it's not quite a halacha question, but what is the responsibility and what should Jews outside of Israel be doing now to live up to that Adam Chashav, that person of importance? How can we support our Chayalei Tzahal? There are so many different efforts and people can get lost, and Chalila people's efforts can be for the wrong causes. What do you think is the way people should be directing their efforts outside of Israel at this moment?
So first of all, I have to say, I'm sure that there are lots of people that do good things. I'm sure. And I'm sure that if someone gives to this one and that one, everyone tries, and it's so inspiring to see Am Yisrael, also in Chutz La'aretz, but also in Eretz Yisrael. This one tries this way, that way, and he tries to raise money here and there. And I think that most things are good. So it's not that, someone gave, I think most things are good. I can tell you that what I'm trying to do is to check with my staff and the officers, the generals in the army, what every unit, what exactly they need now. Sometimes they need now winter clothing. Sometimes they need other things, drones, lots of things, lots of needs that they need. And we are trying to go for hundreds of units in the army to see the exact need, to try to get it, to try to get the funds. And Baruch Hashem, till now we gave already a few $1 million for equipment, and we try to give it directly to the soldiers. So you can do it in lots of, it's not just me, but I know what I'm doing. I know that we are trying to do, and everything, all the money goes directly to the soldiers, and we try also to directly to bring to them that it won't get lost somewhere. So this is one important thing. And another important thing is also to help all the families that left. And there are today 180,000 people that are out of the houses, just to understand. And I'm going to the soldiers, but also I'm going to the families. And I opened yesterday something new called Atufim. Atifa is a cover, and Atuf is Otef Aza. Otef Aza is, we could say, the cover of Aza. I don't know how you say it in English.
The envelope.
So Atufim, it's like to hug someone, la'atof oto in ahava, with love. And we did it. You know that 19 years ago was the disengagement from Gush Katif. And then I opened an organization called Job Katif to help the people from Gush Katif to find jobs. And Baruch Hashem, we have 3,000 of them to find jobs. We helped around 300 to open new businesses, and we brought the Gush Katif people to the average of unemployment in Eretz Israel. And we got the President Award from Shimon Peres on this thing, and then we continue to help in the same system to soldiers from the needy families, to Ethiopians. And straight away, I started to think on those families. Lots of them need temporary jobs, because to stay all day in hotel, you can be Michigan. You can be crazy. And some of them, I hope not a lot, but there will be hundreds, thousands, we don't know exactly, they won't return. They lost children, lots of people, it's too complicated to return there to Otef Gaza, and we have to find permanent jobs. So we started working, and just yesterday was the first day. We had hundreds of people that asked for work, and we already put 40 people in jobs, temporary jobs yesterday. And we are trying to give them counseling and to help them and to make huge things. So this is another thing to concentrate on those families. And we are trying also to help schools. So we are trying to help now, because my head is also education. So we are trying to help now 25 new schools with 35,000 kids that are learning, that will come a few times a week and will give not a normal shiur, but something to inspire them, to give them koach. We are trying to go not just to religious settlements, but also to non-religious, and maybe more to non-religious, because I want Am Israel to be together. And when we help each other, there are places that a month ago, I assumed that they wouldn't want to hear a speech from me. And today when I come there, they hug me. Rabbi Rimon, we love you. And we are together as if we are the closest family ever. And this, we need to work all the time. Also to help the soldiers and the families, but also try to inspire, to bring people to be in unity, together, to bring Am Israel to be together. And this is the right timing. We have it now, but we have to do it and to continue it. I have lots of programs, of tochniot for the future. How to bring Am Israel to be united. And if we work on the right way, in 3 years, Am Israel will be more united than what it was a year ago. We have to think, to dream, to believe in Kadosh Baruch Hu, and to believe in Am Israel, our soldiers, citizens. Wow! It doesn't matter now, religious, not religious, to see the energy, the shlichus, to save Am Israel. And this is something that I think is special for our generation. This is part of redemption, and together, Be'ezrat Hashem will win.
We are so lucky to have a Rav and have Rav Rimon going on bases to inspire soldiers. And listening to all the activities you're involved in leaves me wondering, where do you go to draw strength to allow yourself to continue during all this time? You don't have a Rav Rimon visiting you and inspiring you. So where do you draw from? Where do you get the energy and capacity to do all of the work that you're doing? Who, so to speak, what text, what idea, what poem, what words of Torah? Where do you draw upon the strength and capacity to continue your incredible work in this moment?
It's interesting, because I think I gave speeches of chizuk for thousands and thousands of people. And on Leil Shabbat, I spoke to my community. It's also around 1,000 people. And people came afterwards and said, Kol hakavod, what you are doing. And I saw one teenager around 18 years old. He waits. After everyone went, he came and he says, Harav, who is giving you chizuk? Exactly your question, but it's interesting that maybe you and another one or two asked it till today. It's a good question. The most thing that gives me chizuk is davening. This is the main thing, davening. And also when I'm busy, usually I learn Torah for hours a day, but now I have to answer questions and it's different, but also Torah gives me chizuk. And every chayal and every citizen that I see and I hug, I feel wow. And Al Am Israel. Am Israel is the best. And this what gives me energy. You see Am Israel, you see, although they tried to kill us, so they tried and they succeeded, לצערנו, unfortunately, a little, but Am Israel has energy, has shlichus, has love, connected to Hashem. You see people here, there, you see the connection. And to be with Am Israel, this is what gives me chizuk. Davening, praying, and Am Israel. And maybe in the end of the war, also I have to get a chizuk somehow.
Rev Rimon, it is such an incredible privilege to hear your words, and we are all davening along with you for your continued efforts in the success of Amcha Yisrael, Be'eretz Yisrael. I cannot thank you enough. This has been an incredible privilege to speak with you today.
Rabbi, and I'll just tell you why I must leave right now. Because yesterday I got a telephone from a soldier that I don't know at all. And he said, Arav, tomorrow I have 24 hours of vacation. I want to get married. Can you marry me? So now I'm going straight to Ofra and I'm going to do Khatuna for a soldier that has 24 hours to be with his wife. And there are lots of questions. Okay, what do you do with Sheva Brachot? Can he do Sheva Brachot in the base alone with his friends? And if he didn't do in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they come back, can they do then Sheva Brachot? Can they say Asim Chavim or no? There are questions that are not used to be asked. But Bezrat Hashem, that will deal with Smachot. And we'll see lots of houses are building in Am Yisrael. The terrorists are trying to do dark, to destroy. We are building, we are bringing light, not just for us. Our fight, it's not just for Am Yisrael and not just for Eretz Yisrael. Everyone that hears what happened with this terrible, terrible enemy from the Holocaust, we didn't hear things like this. And we understand we are going to help not just Am Yisrael, we are going to help the whole world. This thing should be destroyed and Be'ezrat Hashem should have the ability to bring light to the world.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone. Please wish that Chatan and Mazal Tov on our behalf. Ashrei Ha'am, that we have such a leader. Rabbi Rimon, thank you so very much.
Toda Rabbi, and toda for the chizuk that you gave me. It was wonderful to be here with you. להתראות בהצלחה בעזרת השם.
When Rabbi Rimon mentioned to me that his grandfather was this celebrated poet and namesake of Yosef Zvi Rimon, something about that, like it was almost as if I already knew, because I'm very familiar with Rabbi Rimon's works. I'll be honest, I had never really done a deep dive in much of Israeli poetry. A lot of that has changed over the past couple months. A lot of it has really changed over the past couple weeks. I find Israeli poetry to be able to articulate this moment and the needs of this moment, the urgency of this moment, how sublime in some ways, how almost indescribable, feeling like you are a part of history as it is unfolding. Something that I think so many of the Jewish people are instinctively feeling right now, where much of our lives it feels like we are watching history but not really participating, not really at the center, not really in the stadium, to paraphrase the famous words of Teddy Roosevelt. But now it feels like we've entered and we've received that invitation from history itself. And there's something remarkable about Rev Rimon, who we just spoke to, that you kind of hear the loving poetry of his grandfather echo in such a different context through the guidance, through the halacha, which is normally something that can be associated with something that's very cold, very uncaring, and he is able to wed it to the empathy, the sensitivity of poetry, and reveal the beauty, the love, the sensitivity, the kindness, the empathy of halacha itself, which is why in this moment it is such a privilege to hear the words of Rav Rimon. And if you haven't already, go out. His book on Shabbos, his book on Shemitah, his book on Yontif, all of these are incredibly accessible and you're really learning with him. And allow me to close by returning to that interview, that Hebrew interview that he had in Makor Rishon. He shares something so beautiful and he concludes the very interview actually with words of his grandfather, where he writes, this is Rav Rimon speaking, he says, Ani ma'amin shetzrichim lirot tov ulechaber et am Yisrael. I deeply believe that we need to see the good, the positivity in one another and unite the Jewish people. And he writes that inside of his latest sefer, he actually brings one of the poems of his grandfather, which is called Shabbos Geula Mitkareves. Shabbos, redemption approaches. And he describes in that poem that they're kind of like the heavenly candles of Shabbos that illuminate the sky. That's the ultimate sign and symbol of the ultimate redemption itself. And he quotes his own grandfather's words that I'd like to conclude with. Dibru tov ish el re'ehu v'yizrach hakodesh lifta aleinu. Speak good, each person to their neighbor. Let's talk positively with one another. And holiness will shine out upon each of us. The osos elokim yiru kibimei kedem, and the signs of God will be seen like in those old days, kibimei kedem, like they once were. Hageula kfar bepesach, redemption is already at the doorstep. Am Yisrael rach tzarich lehit ached ve'oz hageula tifrotz. The people of Israel just need to unite, and then the redemption will burst forth. And I hope Rev Rimon and everything he has done to take the underlying feeling and empathy and poetry of his grandfather and unite it and bring out the empathy and love of halachic guidance itself can be in some ways a bond for this moment, because indeed Geula, redemption, is at our doorstep, and the Jewish people should be able to come together lovingly with kindness to see that good in one another, to see the good and the optimism and the sensitivity and softness and sweetness in our tradition and in our Torah and our halacha, and most of all, within one another. So thank you so much for listening. This episode, like so many of our episodes, was edited by our dearest friend, Dina Emerson. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our episodes, please subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends about it. You can also donate at 1840.org/donate. It really helps us reach new listeners and continue putting out great content. You can also leave us a voicemail with feedback or questions, and please, we want to do one of these episodes soon, and we love people process, especially now. Leave us a voice note. We love hearing from our community, and to play it out a future episode, that number to leave us a voice note is 516-519-3308. Once again, that number is 516-519-3308. If you'd like to learn more about some of the other great topics we've covered in the past, be sure to check out 1840.org. That's the number 18, followed by the word 40, FORTY.org, where you can also find videos, articles, recommended readings, and weekly emails. Thank you so much for listening, and stay curious, my friends.
Shomer Yisrael Shemo